All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. Edmund Burke. He took 4 days to get there. The job itself was another full day. Now, headed home, he'd considered going back through Dallas, but that was the route he'd used to get to the job. Rules were rules, and one ironclad number was, don't ever use the same path twice. This was his 4th job. So far, everything had gone just fine. The rules seemed to work. The killer was long gone from the West Texas cattle ranch before the body was discovered. Authorities accepted the evidence and declared the case closed, despite the fact that the victim was indeed a sitting United States senator. The dead man had been found mostly suspended by 2 strands of barbed wire, his body on the far side of the fence with the wires tightly around and cutting into his neck. A dead calf, also tangled in the lower wires, lay nearby. Careless riders have been known to lose their balance and fall into the wire. This scene had all the markings of such an accident, including the motivation for a rider to lean into the fence. It looked as though the senator had struggled to free himself, at least for a short time. The marks on his neck were in a complete circle, indicating he'd twisted, trying to free himself. But evidence can be deceitful. The assassin was a loner who wasn't from Texas. He'd first been drawn to the state by a need to confirm suspicions of unspeakable acts by this powerful public official. While doing so, the loner had devised 3 possible ways to carry out the kill. Each would appear to be an accident or a death by natural causes. He would determine which to use on his return trip as the circumstances presented themselves. This hunter went to great lengths in assuring both the guilt of his quarry and that his own identity wouldn't be discovered. The absolute guilt of this senator had been established on the killer's first trip to the area, a few weeks prior. Among other things, the senator was a man of habit and strong will. The ranch was vast, covering thousands of acres, and the senator enjoyed checking the fence line in the afternoons. Against the objections of his protection detail, Bill Stock always rode alone. The path used was the same every day, leaving the barn, heading north till he reached the fence, then following it west to the edge of the property. There the fence line would turn south, and the senator would check for broken wires or other problems as he rode for miles in that direction. His trek never varied, and would take hours, returning him to the ranch house just before dark. So predictable was this ride that it hadn't gone unnoticed by the assassin on that first trip to the area. The return visit to the ranch didn't take long. The killer's plan was carefully mapped out. He'd borrowed a horse from a neighboring ranch and rode north onto the senator's property. The assassin brought with him the supplies needed to carry out his scheme, including a replacement lock for the entry gate he'd just broken. Finding the dead calf resolved the how, and having already picked the where, it was simply a matter of pulling the carcass under the lower strand of wire and then dragging the calf to the location. That spot was about 600 yards north, but still along the fence line. Placing the calf carcass near the fence, the killer entangled one rear leg in the lower fence wires. After hiding his device, a wire-throwing sling, under a large, dried-out pile of brush, he'd taken the horse back several hundred yards down the fence line so it would be out of view. The assassin had his own rules, which he followed to the letter. Rules, though concocted by him, had served their purpose well thus far. One of the rules required him to think of himself in the third person while on a mission. This worked for the loner by keeping him focused on his other identity, the one that inspired him. A student of the American Revolution and its heroes, He'd picked a relatively unknown revolutionary figure as his surrogate model. The alter ego created was Silas. Silas the patriot.